So I want to talk a little bit about the stages of learning Spinal Qigong. And when you're doing Tai Chi or another movement practice sort of derived from the same Qigong principles, there are several different layers to working with the spine, right? And some of them fall into the sort of spinal awareness category, where you're just learning how to move your body and coordinate it physically. So you need to become aware of this major support structure in the spine. So there's awareness. There's sort of like integration. So the spine becomes a central integrator in the body, along with the qua, energetically the lower dantian. But the spine can become a governor of movement and an integrator of movement. And then there's the sort of energetic territory, working with the energy of the spine, which I think, at least from my perspective these days, is an extension of the integration phase, where you really start to work out, and this happens along the way to some degree, but you really start to work out the bound energy of the spine and infuse the arms and legs with spinal power. And that is a really different stage of practice. And from one end of the continuum to the other, you need lots of different degrees of sensitivity. So I want to show you some of the example exercises that you'd work with in Spinal Qigong that allow you this access, first through feeling awareness, then through coordination, and finally through integration. So everybody's heard, when they learn their Tai Chi practice, about aligning the head and the pelvis. What it does, that I don't know if people kind of realize, is that when you bring, from your regular standing into head alignment and pelvic alignment, what it does is it puts some light traction on the spine. It lengthens your spine along its axis. And this is fascinating for a couple different reasons. The biggest one is that every misalignment and distortion in the arms and legs is going to tug on the spine and pull on the spine. So if you go to your spine as the central thing that you're going to organize around, you're going to find yourself making adjustments in your arms and legs that help you stabilize the spine. So a large part of the first kind of awareness, even if you're doing something like a cloud hands single movement exercise, is just being able to feel your spine and move from the legs and the pelvis in a way that supports the spine and doesn't require that you torque or tweak the spine. We want it to stay like a fixed column. So at the first level, here, we want to feel the rotation through the hip joints and the movement of the pelvis and the loosening at the sacrum so that your spine can move as a unit through space. And that's bolstered by the sense of what they say in Tai Chi, emptying the neck to raise the energy to the crown of the head. So at the bottom you have the anchor, and the pelvis can't wobble around. And at the top you have a lift. So that as you shift, even if you get into more complicated shifting patterns, or you get into stepping and turning, there's not this kind of wobble and distortion that feeds up through your spine. You create a stable base. You should also have, as a next stage, some exercises that help you build direct awareness of the different pieces of the spine. So this is why we do the Taoist spine stretch, where if you look at it from the side, you'll see that you go in and start at the bottom, and you work on feeling every hinge joint in the spine, all 24 pieces of the spine and how they're connected, and you systematically and sequentially release what's bound and holding around the spine. So not only does this bring kind of resolution physically and energetically, but it makes you aware of what you're doing in the spine. You get to the top, you start at the bottom again, and by actually doing this version where you keep the hips down a little bit more as opposed to a big fold, the byproduct is that you're learning how to connect the legs to the spine, so that even when you get this lift up through here, it feels like it came from opening the feet, and you're more firmly kind of fusing the connection between the legs and the spine. Which, if you look at this compared to other forms of exercise that do sequential spinal movements, that's a big differentiator in Tai Chi. We're always on our feet, And we want the connection from the ground to the spine. So we're not, unless we're building, just purely building awareness, the functional exercises that translate into Tai Chi the most have you standing up. You're not going to lie down and do kind of spinal rolls and stuff like that. I think that stuff is good and useful, but it's not, I want you to understand that it's not how we do it in Tai Chi to directly translate into the connection of the back leg getting all the way up through the crown of the head. You know each of these points along the way because you've worked it in your spine stretch, so that as you come through, the power is really clear, and you know, oh, if this one's shut down, you know, you at least have some idea how to get it through. From here, you shift into the integration stages of the spinal work. And for integration, the paradigm that they use in Tai Chi is they talk about 5 unified bows. So each arm and each leg, 1, 2, 3, 4 bows, and the spine itself has to behave like a bow and arrow. So you're looking at a curve that bends and stretches. So when you see people doing the Tai Chi form and the limbs are bending and stretching in sync, this is setting up for bending and stretching the limbs and the spine in a unified way. And the Qigong, the spinal Qigong that goes with that, is an exercise like bend the bow and shoot the arrow. Now you understand the name. So you're bending the spine, bending the limbs, and feeling in an ever more hydraulic way how the pumping action of the arms and legs is mimicked by and sort of facilitates the pumping in the spine. And as you do this exercise more and more, it becomes more hydraulic. So the hydraulics of all the fluids in the spine engage. Now you move them to bow the spine this way, and then as you release the spine, you work on integrating that release out the arms and legs. And later on, this can be done as a powerful way to absorb and project energy, but that's a consequence of having deep, deep physical integration between the bending of the spine and the bending of the arms and legs. So again, just the quick kind of big landmarks: awareness, coordination, and integration. That's how you want to develop what's going on in your spine. And the cool thing is that along the way, as you go through those 3 stages, you're going to work out all kinds of misalignments in the body and get the energy flows much stronger through the body and be able to pump a lot more fluids or energy through the body, because you're accessing these natural, deep pumping mechanisms that underlie all movement potentially. So I hope that makes sense. I'll write it out for you too. It's a really different paradigm. This idea of hydraulic movement is a really different thing than the way most of us move around. But it's a core internal component of good Tai Chi. So I hope you have a way to get some of those stages into your practice. Thanks.